Will Good evening to all parents, teachers, and students of Indus Fraternity and all viewers from across the globe. I welcome you on behalf of Indus School of Leadership, Bangalore, to this webinar. The theme, Reimagining Leadership Development, Relevance of Online Learning, Leadership Competencies. Before I begin the discussions, I would introduce you to our distinguished speakers. The first speaker, Mr. V.G. Siddharthan, Founder and Managing Director, Bodhi Learning Solutions, Bangalore. Mr. Siddharthan established the Bodhi Institute in the year 2008. He plays multiple roles as entrepreneur, trainer, facilitator, coach, and mentor. He has deep conceptual knowledge and versatile practical expertise across analyzing learning needs, development of instructional design, and deliver implementation programs to outstanding tangible business outcomes. Mr. Siddharthan consults with organizations for the strategic decision making, coaches senior executives for improving performance, and mentors entrepreneurs to realize their dreams. He is passionate about traveling, trekking, philosophy, organic farming, political analysis, entrepreneurial best practices, and researching ancient civilization and cultures. A word about his Bodhi Institute. Bodhi is ranked as top 7 in the world for Train the Trainer certifications. Bodhi's area of specialization includes leadership training, behavioral training, communication skills, training certificate, and technology training. I welcome you, sir, to today's discussion. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here, Colonel.
Thank you, Mr. Siddharthan, for being with us. The second speaker, Ms. Nuvera Pasha, Principal, Indus International School, Hyderabad. Education is not the learning of facts, but training of the mind to think, quote Albert Einstein. A strong believer of the quote, Ms. Nuvera Pasha brings more than 15 years of experience in the pre-primary and primary years. She acquired her qualified teacher status in pre-primary, primary, and secondary education from London. She also holds a diploma in early childhood and preschool practice, making her a specialist in the field. She has taught the British National Curriculum for 8 years in London, followed by teaching in an IBPYP school for the latter part of her career. She is also trained in special educational needs and is a strong believer in early intervention and following an all-inclusive approach, ensuring every child is given an equal opportunity to develop themselves. Currently, she is pursuing MA in Education with Birmingham University. I welcome you, ma'am. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Colonel Satya. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. The third speaker, Mrs. Prafulla Shetty, parent at Indus International School, Bangalore. Mrs. Prafulla Shetty is a parent of Agastya and Kanish studying at Indus School, Bangalore. She has been an aviator and a pilot. She is now the director of Gujarat Industrial Caterers Private Limited. She is also a yoga therapist and works with differently abled children. Her husband, Mr. Ikshit Singh, is the chief pilot with Manipal Group. I welcome you, ma'am. Thank you for accepting our invitation.
Good evening, one and all, and thank you, Colonel Satya, for that introduction and for the opportunity to be a part of this panel. And I hope to contribute to an engaging discussion this evening.
Thank you very much, ma'am. We look forward to. The fourth speaker is Ms. Anjali Murthy. She is the head girl at Indus International School, Pune. Anjali Murthy is a student head girl at Indus School, Pune. She has proudly represented her alma mater at various inter-school competitions and leadership conferences. In the school, she has been recognized for her leadership qualities and high levels of empathy. She is a Bharatanatyam dancer and is currently preparing for her Arangetram or classical graduation. She is a guitarist and an amateur pianist. Writing and literature are her passions, and she has nurtured her talent as a writer of spoken poetry by submitting her work to online magazines. She served as a volunteer in year 2018 at Sonam Wangchuk School, Sekmol in Leh Ladakh. She completed an internship assignment as a content researcher with Bassett Education India, a life skills trainer center in Pune in 2019. In the summer of 2020, she completed a summer program in screenwriting from the New York Film Academy and looks forward to spreading her wings globally. to first learn, nurture, grow, and then contribute to the greater good of society. I welcome you, Anjali. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Colonel. I look forward to this discussion and I'm honored to be here.
Thank you, Anjali. We look forward too. And I am Colonel Satya Rao, Director, Indus School of Leadership, and I would be the moderator for these discussions. To begin with, leadership and learning are indispensable to each other, said John F. Kennedy. As Kennedy rightly points out, leadership and learning go hand in hand. Not everyone is a natural leader. Some need to hone and polish their skills and ability to understand the concepts of leadership competencies. With the right amount of training and experience, one can become an efficient leader. Someone who can lead and inspire the team to work hard to achieve better outcomes. So, needless to say, online leadership training is the best route to coach the digital natives into their future roles. Leadership development is a lifelong journey on path of self-development. Leadership is the enabling art for using one's knowledge, competencies, and skills, for being an asset for the organization. For a student to graduate from good to great, leadership qualities have to be learned so as to create an environment of ownership and responsibility. The quest for leadership is first an inner quest to discover who am I. This is clearly the premise of the unique collection of development activities which guide the learners on the fascinating journey of self-awareness and purpose. Ladies and gentlemen, with the present pandemic scenario, the on-ground experiential learning process is limited, and we do not know how the future will unfold in the coming days. Therefore, to continue our journey of creating leaders of tomorrow, online leadership development need to be considered to understand the concept of leadership competencies. There is always resistance from something new is introduced in any and every aspect of learning. I therefore wish to seek insights in the benefit and effectiveness of online leadership development for the students from our distinguished speakers. So the first question of the evening for discussion, all schools have shifted to online learning due to the pandemic situation. The students are the most affected for reasons we are aware of. In such a situation, we are uncertain of the future, and there is always a possibility of relapse in many forms that would hamper the routine functioning of schools. In such a scenario, do you think that virtual learning is the answer? If so, what are the benefits and challenges in front of the students in learning online? I would like Ms. Nuvera to share her thoughts, being the head of a school. Yes, Ms. Nuvera Pasha.
Thank you, Colonel Rao. That's a very relevant question. Not just the present, but I feel the future that we and our next generations will face is going to be a very VUCA scenario. Hence, virtual learning is not just a forced substitute or option. It is the way forward for future learning, which is an alternative way of learning, and blended learning will become the new norm. And why not? Because when the world's workplaces are becoming more virtual by the day, should our education system not embrace virtual teaching and learning? We must understand that virtual teaching and learning is not a substitute to physical classroom teaching, where content is taught the same way, but in front of a computer. It is very important that we acknowledge the fact that COVID-19 has changed the entire face of learning. It is becoming boundaryless, and we are observing that virtual schooling is not only allowing, but actually encouraging students to take responsibility and ownership of their own learning and growth. It is making the students the center of the entire learning. Seemingly surprising, but virtual learning is actually more personalized too, where a student has a choice to learn in a manner and pace better suited to himself, as it promotes self-directed learning and making students more independent. Learning doesn't stop after the regular interaction with the teachers. It's then complemented with an asynchronous process where the student explores a myriad of resources to learn independently and has access to a world of expertise which they didn't have earlier. We've also observed that our students concentrate better as the distractions are limited, which makes learning deep and focused. But if I were to answer your question on the challenges, is it all good? Well, of course, there are areas where we are facing some challenges with the students and with the teachers. The lack of social interaction is something we need to consider, as nothing in the world can substitute the priceless interactions children have in a face-to-face classroom. Teachers world over have quickly risen to the occasion of holding forth with online classes. But we're still not there. Teacher development and readiness needs a lot of attention because, like I mentioned in my talk earlier, virtual teaching is not teaching the same content the same way in front of a computer. It is a completely different process, and we have embarked upon the journey to quickly learn and enhance our pedagogical skills to suit online learning. And lastly, but most importantly, virtual schooling is fighting a battle that exists in our minds, our own resistance to change. The mindset of all three stakeholders, that is the students, the teachers, and the parents, particularly in the Indian context, where there's too much dependence on the teacher. So though we use the designation of a facilitator, teachers must consciously facilitate learning instead of just teaching it to the students.
Right. Thank you, Ms. Nuvera. Well said. Let's look at the perspective from a parent's angle. Mrs. Prafulla Shetty, would you like to share your thoughts?
Sure. I hate to be a bearer of glorifying the pandemic, but can't thank the occurrence of the epidemic enough. The pace our life had taken was detrimental to this planet. It was toxic, it was inorganic. We were all forced to recede from limelight. No longer were we in control. We were sitting back and surrender to an unseen tiny speck of a virus. Overnight, it brought into focus that we humans were a tiny part of an ecosystem. We were a cog in the wheel that so essentially needed to understand the importance to coexist. This calamity basically brought us down to our knees. It helped us regain our humanity with some amount of intelligence, a whole lot of altruism and compassion. For our children, it basically put them through a litmus test to gauge their ability to adapt and thrive. Online learning has to be one of the greatest revolutions in contemporary education. It's basically designed for a new age learner. It had a huge change in the system and opened great opportunities for everyone who bears that innate need to learn. At the very onset, when the state's directive came in asking schools to close doors, the prompt execution by Indus, what was pretty clear was that everything was pre-planned and there was a whole lot of back-end work that went into having a system already in place. And they imparted their lessons through WebEx, with the teachers all well acquainted on that platform with focused lesson plans. This basically helped drown out many forms of distraction. Each and every one of us felt a sense of insecurity. It felt we were all vulnerable. Between all that chaos, there was yet a plan. It helped maintain a purpose and focus. There was a silver line between all those dark clouds. This inculcated a richer appreciation to self-directed primary learning. It also required from our kids more self-motivation and time management skills. It helped being extremely efficient with your time, allowing your children to accomplish a lot more than usual. Accessing school through the comfort of your home, where you helped dodge Bangalore traffic, which I think everybody would agree we could live without. But of course, on hindsight, that is something my boys dearly miss. Their downtime when they blended music against an Indian topography, the time they dreamt. We customized our learning environment. We created a perfect study space. We dedicated that one room for that quiet study time. Sometimes, of course, it was a huge challenge. The other benefit of the teenagers who have their circadian clocks, which are not figured to rising up early on, they had the benefit of resting longer and getting those few extra minutes each morning where they basically didn't have to fuss around getting dressed and having breakfast early and rushing around. So sometimes a face-to-face articulation of your thoughts. Some children who are of a shy bent, I believe this became a bit of a challenge. Whereas with this medium, it helped them find a voice. The possibility of instantly gratifying any doubt was also something we saw as a benefit in this online medium. Now, for challenges, I could definitely speak of how it caused a lot of social isolation, which I think a lot of the children complained about, that remoteness and lack of interaction. And I believe those are some areas where we need to focus on the health and wellness of the child and help him combat with loneliness.
Right. Thank you so much, Ms. Prafula Shetty. The great insights. Now let's ask the affected party, that's the student. Ms. Anjali Murthy, would you like to share your thoughts on this?
Of course, sir. With regard to what Ms. Pasha and Ms. Shetty have shared, I couldn't agree more. I think that we are in new and unfamiliar territory with regard to where the world is right now. Of course, virtual learning is the closest to education in a school environment, in a scenario that such as the one we're in right now. As a student myself, I can say from personal experience that one challenge that may be acknowledged across all ages who are learning online is the discipline. When it's online, we don't have to, as Ms. Shetty said, we don't have to catch the bus at 7:15 a.m. And instead, we can rise according to our own sleep schedules, get in our 8 hours of rest, and then we sit in the comfort of our own home and we're accessing a class that very much requires our concentration. And in a relaxed environment, it may be a challenge to bring a student into a full out school mode of concentration. It is possible that you're sitting at your study desk and your phone rings or your dog walks in, and that could be a distraction. However, a huge plus point of having an online class is the flexibility that it provides. I feel as a student, it's possible to capture. It hasn't been possible before, but it is possible now to capture an entire class through a recording. And so, let's say a concept is not clear, or I miss a class, or my internet connection isn't as good as I would like it to be. It is possible to access the atmosphere of that class again and harness the points that were highlighted during that class. The topics can be clarified again and again. I feel that flexibility is very important, especially today. Of course, our health is a concern, considering that we will have to compensate for all the time that we're missing out in a physical environment with online learning. And so there have been complaints of eye aches and headaches and such things that parents, students, and teachers alike are all worried about. But with regulation, the online platform is a tool that's at our use. This is how we use it. And so I feel like we're at a lot of liberty to use it the way we'd like. There is a loss of experiential learning, I feel, with some back end thoughts. What is happening in the world? Am I going to as a grade 12 student, a lot of people in my grade are wondering, are we going to go to school for our graduation? A lot of back end thoughts highlight your day every single day. But once we can move past this and see that online learning, as Ms. Pasha correctly said, is the future, it is the new norm, and blended learning is the key to actually developing our society in terms of education. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you so much. So we heard the principal of our school speaking on the online learning, and we have heard the parents speaking, and now the student who spoke. Just to add, virtual platform offers opportunity to interface anytime across the globe and build concepts of their own pace and understanding. And like very rightly Anjali said, learning is easy in the comfort of home. And online learning also helps in addressing mass level education. And let me tell you one thing, in my opinion, education is essentially the stimulation of heart and mind, and it can be done on any interface. We all learn in different ways. Virtual world has no limit of tools. Different modes of learning could be applied to engage multiple intelligences. So thank you for that insights on learning, and I'm sure most of our viewers understand now, having seen their children going through online classes. So we come to the next question. Experiential learning is about learning from others. Online learning process can help in sharing and reflecting others' experiences. Leadership is a game of mind and heart. Wars are fought in the minds. Even in personal life, greatest battles are the ones which happen in one's mind. Do you think online leadership training can stimulate the student's mind? I would request Mr. Siddharthan to share his thoughts. Him being 12 years, he has been in this game of conducting programs for multinational companies, entrepreneurs, and also students. So, Mr. Siddharthan, please.
Yeah. So the first thing is, I think online training or online learning has been there for quite some time. It's just that today more and more people are speaking about it. Say, for instance, how many of them here in this meet have learned guitar, seeing a YouTube video, or say learned to cook, looking at a video from online. So we already been using it. It's just that today it's spoken more, right? That is one part of the story. Now, when it comes to, say, corporate learning, it is no different. So initially, we had a lot of resistance from multinational companies, especially when the pandemic hit us. Is it going to be effective? Are they going to be real learning happening here? What's the kind of engagement you're going to bring on to the table? And a whole lot of questions. So that is with respect to few of the clients. But having said that, there were several companies already had adopted to online learning. It is not new for them. So, for example, let's take a language training. It was happening already. Now, a lot of leadership training programs are happening already. Now, if you look at some of the senior management programs are happening online. Now, several universities have already shifted to online learning. It is not new to them, and we all have enrolled in the past. It is nothing new about it. Why everybody are talking today is because there's pandemic and then there's no other option but to learn everything or most of the things from online. So there is a buzz about, okay, now we have no other option left. But believe me, online learning or online training has been there for quite some time. Now, what is important in an online training? First, the content. Now, if the content is meeting the objectives, now here we're talking about leadership training, right? Now, leadership, what is leadership? There are a whole lot of traits, characteristic of becoming a leader. Now, if the classroom training, be it a classroom training or online training, if it is able to meet the objective, the content is able to meet the objective, then I think that is one part done. The second is the facilitation, how the whole thing is being facilitated. No doubt it is being facilitated through online. There are challenges, no doubt, but what way the tool is being used effectively. Like I'm sure institution or several other institutions adopt these tools effectively. Like for example, there is a tool, there is there's a concept called breakout rooms, right? Where you can still make students into groups, give them activities, schedule a time, they discuss those activities and they come back and then discuss in the main room. Now, is it any different in a classroom setup? No, of course, there is a face-to-face interaction. But here, again, they are talking, they are seeing each other. There is the physical proximity is not there, of course. But having said that, online is mostly is able to fill the gaps. The third is the interest of the students, of course, here, because students are the people who are like receiving the knowledge. How are they ready to receive these knowledge? These are the three things that we need to look at. One, it's content. Second, the way it is being facilitated, and the student readiness to learn. When it comes, so here we're talking about just the tool, but the knowledge can be shared, be it in a classroom training, be it in an online session. The differences are going to be very minute, and programs like leadership training can be very well effectively trained because it is mostly to do with behavioral skills. This can be done through a lot of activities, group engagement. Say the students are given a lot of researches to be done, maybe certain application to be done in their, say, at their comfort. So that way, the online, through using the online platform, leadership training can definitely deliver. And we have seen huge amount of success in the corporate field. The initial, the resistance to learn through online is gone. Even from the participant side, it's no more. Like they're open now. It's typically the Rama effect I keep referring to. Any change for the movement. The first, there is a lot of resistance. Then there is an annoyance. Okay, what do we do now? No, there's no other option now left. Then there is there's no mellowness. Okay, now there's no much option. I got to settle for it. Finally, there is, okay, here there is no other option left. Let me accept it. And then, yeah, that's the process. Everything has to go through. And I think online training has already gone through to several people there. Of course, students, teachers are probably it's new. For some, for many, it's already there. So corporate or be it institution like yours, no different. We all have to go through that
Yeah.
phase, and effectiveness definitely there's no compromise on the effectiveness factor, be it
Right.
online or offline. Yeah.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Siddharthan. Let's look at what Anjali Murthy has to say, having experiential learning and vis-a-vis the online leadership development training. Yeah, Anjali.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Siddharthan, for raising very valid points that I fully agree with. And I think since most of us here are part of the Indus family, aside from being an institution that follows the IB curriculum, the distinguishing factor of Indus lies in its emphasis on leadership. And I feel like it's a very core aspect of what we teach here, and what we learn at all ages. Leadership training may be a recent concept. However, the skill itself has been adopted and refined conceptually by world leaders in various fields from whom we continue to learn every single day. And it's a skill that used to be purely experiential. And now the training that we can access, either virtually in the context of the pandemic or otherwise, it accelerates that process of focusing on yourself in the context of something bigger. When you're a leader, you are part of a team, and so you definitely are in a position where the decisions you make have ripple effects. And
Right.
so that's a key concept of leadership. And so the ISL sessions that we had in Indus, Pune, there are topics that aren't usually covered in school curriculum that we did cover during the camp. I was part of the batch 2021 LC camp that took place a week or two ago. And the topics that were covered include wellness, mental well being, creative and nonlinear thinking, innovation, out of the box thinking, higher purpose finding. These are not academic subjects or areas of study. However, they are key concepts that we should be thinking about as futuristically oriented citizens. The activities that we had included everything that some people must have said wouldn't have been possible on a virtual platform, such as group games in breakout rooms, or analyzing videos in terms of comedy or just a message or a speech, and hypothetical situations where we were put in a scenario, imaginary scenario, and we had to find our way out. This is all a simulation of experiential learning, and I feel like the role playing that we did was enriching in a different sense than it would have been even in person. And ultimately, the topics of the sessions, they stopped being just headliners and more of objectives that were actually accomplished. So when I finished the innovation session, you came out knowing that you had been innovative in a situation that you were put in during the session. And when you finished the higher purpose session, where we were asked to think about what we stand for, not just as leaders, but as people, issues that bother us, that's very insightful to one as an individual. And I feel like it's very valuable to some people who may feel like they don't know what they want to do yet, or people who do and have consolidated their thinking. And so, thus, I feel like minds are strengthened through this. And I felt like that was something that should be drawn attention to. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anjali. I think very well said, and you have covered it very well. Just to add, the better part of virtual leadership program is that it offers ample me time. You are at home and you are on the screen, and there is a lot of me time for drawing greater insights and building concept maps. Like you said, you have learned a lot during the concept maps, figuring out how to do it. Yeah. And let me tell you, training and teaching is a matter of leadership. Leaders operate in the arenas of heart and mind of people. Relevance is the key. The learner needs to be more sensitive and empathetic to overcome the physical distance. And that's how I think if you look at the visualization and the imagination part, when you're learning the leadership development training, I think it all falls in place. So thank you for the insights, both Mr. Siddharthan and Anjali. Thank you. And we move to the third question of the day. Finding one's purpose in life is long drawn effort. Also, finding the direction towards your vision is challenging. It has been argued that along with change, vision is also constant, and that's the lighthouse for human existence. Is there rationale in making students to understand the purpose and vision at this young age? I would seek Ms. Nuvera Pasha's thoughts on this.
Most certainly, Colonel Satya. No age is too young to introduce the concept of life's purpose and vision to students, because children in their school-going years are most receptive to learning. They're akin to the potter's clay and can be molded. Most, in fact, all emotional learning ceases in adults, and trying to steer them as adult citizens is like trying to steer the Titanic. Giving children a purpose and vision is the best teaching any school can give its students. In fact, our Indian old age culture is of early learning in gurukuls. Building of values and higher order thinking from formative years has been our way of learning, not just in India. There are other cultures too that teach their children the big existential concepts very early. Now let's look at the Israeli contribution of Tikkun Olam to the world. It means heal the world. Tikkun Olam, which is an Israeli way of life, is imbibed in children from the age of 3. Most relevant to us all than ever before, with climate emergency and nuclear wars glaring at us from just around the bend. They produce more innovators in almost every field with their education system. They start teaching their kids all things that matter and all things important very, very early. Helping a student find their purpose and vision gives them deeper meaning and direction, and eventually self-actualization as they blossom into very responsible citizens. It is not about preparation for exams. It's all about preparation for life.
Yeah, thank you, Nuvera. Thank you very much. Let's request Ms. Siddharthan to give his insights. Since he has been interacting with so many adults and students, what do you feel, Ms. Siddharthan?
Thank you, Colonel, and very well put, Ms. Nuvera. So, vision, it's a pretty interesting topic, in fact, and very key, very important topic when it comes to leadership. There are so many topics and concepts that we learn when we go for a leadership program, but vision is one of the most important. It kind of gives a direction, a sense of purpose. It's like a driver, to do something, to get something, to go somewhere. So it is very important that it is given at a very young age, especially when they are getting out of the school and going behind a higher dream, achieving a higher dream. That's the best time to give a version. I mean, through this program, of course. So, why it is important at this stage? The students passing out or going through the session will be able to clearly see how a future would look like. Now, then, see, when you're clear right now, given a situation like, imagine how much of fear that probably students, everyone is having, including us, right? Like because of the pandemic. Now, there is a lot of uncertainty just because there is a pandemic which nobody expected, and here we are in the middle of that, and then we hear a whole lot of news, and then it kind of disturbs us. Imagine that pandemic is not here, everything is fine. Now you need a driver, right? You need to see something and then you need to visualize yourself being there. Then it kind of pushes you ahead, and then it kind of gives you hope to get somewhere. So it's very important to give it at a very young age. They should know how a future would look like. They should be able to get an image of how a future would look, and especially at an young age, if they can visualize, imagine, fantastic. I mean, we are kind of preparing them there itself. Everything else kind of can add value to the course. Like if you're talking about the whole leadership and the package, starting with vision is very, very important. When they kind of complete this course, Because once they know that this is how my future could look like, these are the things that I'm going to do, these are some of the competence that I need to develop over the years, these are the knowledge that I have to acquire over the years, you're kind of preparing them to face a larger challenge once they are in a professional space or post college or school life. So it's very important at a very young age to give this kind of knowledge, and I'm sure ISL is doing a fantastic job on it.
Thank you. Right. Thank you, Mr. Dasan. Like both the speakers spoke about the purpose, and even in my experience, it is not that the purpose will just come to your, you can't run after purpose. It happens. It happens at the right time. It gives you a trigger, and then you move forward. And once you get the purpose, the vision is very clear. You set a vision for yourself, and then set your goals. So I think everyone needs to understand that the outer world and the inner world. The outer world is, the external factor, and the inner world is what is within you. And when there is a gap between both of them, that's the divine dissatisfaction which people understand. And if they understand that, I think the purpose will be born. And so I would look at, and especially leadership is something, and maturity has nothing to do with age. I don't think you can say that young children will not understand purpose or the vision. But in today's scenario, I think these are the most important aspects for a student or anyone for that matter to move in the journey of life. Take examples. I mean, you can see so many examples. Alexander the Great, he became the king at the age of 19. Mark Zuckerberg started the company as a teen and became a billionaire at 23. Sachin Tendulkar made his international debut at the age of 16. Justin Bieber released his first album at the age of 16. So therefore, creativity, imagination, initiative, energy, risk-taking, and other leadership traits are at its high peak during teens, I would say. But as we grow in age, these traits fade slowly, though we do acquire other skills. So I suppose, like the speakers have brought in, that there is no age limit. I mean, for understanding purpose, understanding the vision, and setting goals for yourself. Because that's the track. That's where you move ahead in life. So thank you very much for your insights, Novera and Mr. Siddharthan. So with this, we move forward to the next question. All leaders may not be entrepreneurs, but all entrepreneurs can be leaders. In that case, does innovation take a front seat in today's 21st century? Creativity, critical thinking, collaboration, and risk taking would form the foundation for innovation. How do we inculcate the appetite to develop an entrepreneurial mindset among students? I would request Mrs. Prafula Shetty to share her thoughts from being a pilot and moving to be an entrepreneur and heading as a director of the Gujarat Industrial Caterers Private Limited. Ma'am, would you like to share your thoughts on this?
I'm quite privileged to be addressing this question. Not sure what warrants me to be speaking about this at large, but my good guess is the bird's eye perception that what my mother usually highlights, how recklessly I have squandered through some very established career choices, and yet I never felt like I had arrived. Some I was clearly not cut out to be, and some I did not fancy my personality enough. So to get some perspective into understanding this further, I have to basically introduce you to a researched concept. There are 4 types of people who approach life and career choices. Now, there is a disclaimer. There is a broad consensus that only one of them is successful. But I personally do beg to differ. Partially, I would ask you to use your good judgment. Now, there are the dabblers. In a nutshell, they start something new, they experience the high that comes with the quick results, they hit a plateau, and then they create an excuse to quit and move on to something new. There are the obsessors. In a nutshell, it's an upward curve, they hit a plateau, they get impatient, they try to push past it, and then they move on to the next level. And while they're doing that, they run out of gas and experience, and there's a sharp downward decline. Then there are the hackers. The hackers just hack away at things without working to improve their skills. So they grow beyond the basics. And then there are the masters. What do the masters do different? They start something new, they experience the high, they come with quick results, they hit a plateau, and here they embrace that plateau as a part of their journey. They know that a breakthrough is coming soon. They're always present, and they know their journey is the destination.
Right.
It's very important to know which type of person defines you. And also, in different stages of your life, you could be with different approaches. So once you know your tendencies, it's much more easier to recognize them, and it'll help you pursue that path of mastery. If living a meaningful life is important to you, then it is important to gain mastery broadly.
Right.
But as gratifying as the path of mastery can be, it can also be incredibly difficult. At times, you may be tempted to bail out on mastery and settle for mediocrity. So allow me to indulge you into some history, taking you back into my life, where I used to be a teenager who was extremely planned. I prodded and of having a very prominent career path of being an aviator. I started at a very early age of 17. I was inspired by that Ray-Ban poster of a female pilot who spoke of wanting to be a pilot at 6 and became a pilot at 24. It also spoke about pilots were not for women, men became pilots. So I was a rebel anyway. After my private license in India, I flew out to the US to pursue this vocational course. While I enjoyed the exhilaration and thrill, I began to realize I really wasn't that daredevil I perceived myself to be. To add to the mix, I had a few experiences, engine fire, a near air miss, lost on flight. And what that did was basically left a sense of fear. And keep in mind, clearly, I was in that obsessive state. And with every hurdle that came my way, I was losing my drive. The last straw was when Muhammad Atta, he was an aviation student affiliated with the Al Qaeda, decided to take an airplane into the World Trade Center in 2001. And that unfortunately coincided with the time when I was just completing my training. So that left me with zero job prospects for any foreign student in the US who were just rolling out of school. So that was my first disruption, which called for me to adapt and go back to the drawing board and go back into redefining myself. Thereafter, I dabbed and hacked through many jobs and careers. I worked with serial entrepreneurs who primarily worked on mergers and acquisitions. I owned a restaurant and then sold it. I worked in the retail sector as a merchandiser. I worked as a client partner, sending IT projects to India. I worked in the real estate field in the US. One thing, while I dabbed through all of this, which was inherent to me, was the urge to absorb everything and want an immersive experience. I made peace with giving up aviation by supporting a husband who was a fellow true blood aviator. It takes something to be an aviator. And of course, I realized that much later in life. On the other end, feeding to my spiritual growth, I also trained as a yoga teacher and a therapist, and I began to work with differently abled children. Currently now, as a director of a service industry-based company that I inherited, I bring in all that I learned in each and every job. It's a grand amalgamation. Many a times I find myself referring to those jobs I dabbed and hacked through. So after all this, I yet today feel like a diversified new age company. My feet are firmly gripped. Rather, my tentacles are in many boats. My glass yet feels half full. Yet I am perpetually in a state of wonder and can't seem to cap my curiosity. For the broader quest of whether I am happy, undoubtedly, I wouldn't have had it any other way. bringing us back to the original question. Broadly, more than often, we do think that entrepreneurship and leadership are synonymous qualities. But of course, an entrepreneur is expected to break new ground. He's supposed to be innovative. He starts something new. You will obviously imagine that he would want to lead that thing that he started. However, it turns out that the required skills that you need to have as an entrepreneur is almost different from the required skills to be an effective leader. So this is a vast difference. There is a really vast difference between creating a business and then growing one. So now, since the school treads on the path of getting the kids startup ready and they intend to make entrepreneurs of our kids, there are 5 leadership skills that entrepreneurs must master. They should know how to delegate. They should be excellent communicators. Now, keep in mind, there are different kinds of communicators. There are the kinds of Shashi Tharoor. Now, he does communicate really well, but does that usually cause a dialogue? Probably not. It creates a monologue. It doesn't really get people who are being spoken to open up and speak further about themselves. And I sometimes feel that kind of communication is necessary for lawyers, but not so necessary for someone who is interested in building a business. So he's got to be able to make that person before him comfortable, where that person can open his heart and tell him a few 10 things about themselves. So they have to be very inspiring. They have to inspire people. Everybody doesn't come perfect. Everybody has immense amount of flaws. What's very important is to find that one great feature that everyone has, that one unique feature that you can hone on as an organization, and bring all of these great features in all of these individuals together, and then work as a team. You have to be able to coach them positively. You have to be able to adapt to an environment. So broadly, for an entrepreneurial mindset, how do we inculcate an entrepreneurial mindset? You have to be ready to improve all the time. You have to be able to have the ability to confront self-doubt. You have to be accountable, recognize your responsibility for an outcome. When big things go wrong, the buck stops with you. So you do accept that. Even when the outcomes are outside of your complete control, the entrepreneurial thinking requires you to avoid making excuses and instead take action to resolve the option.
Right.
You should have resilience, your ability to bounce back from failure. Failure is so important. You have to have that willingness to experiment. Entrepreneurs are always willing to experiment when it comes to new products, business plans, problem-solving techniques. You have to set a very clear goal. You have to be able to speak to the universe, write it down, mention it to friends and family who will hold you accountable to those thoughts. You have to be decisive. Small businesses and startups can be ruined by indecision. You have to redefine failure. The true failure is not trying at all. And it is so important that you fail and you make those mistakes, because that makes you human. You can actually practice failure dialogues, where you sit and you speak about how you failed 20 times. And the 21st time, you'll actually see how this failure made you that fantastic person who's bounced right back from there. So, and you have to face your fears, of course. You have to remain curious all the time, stay present. You have to be in the moment. What is very important these days for us is to be present, to know that it is so important that the journey is direction. You have to enjoy every moment of your life. Many a times we focus on where we are heading and we forget to enjoy what we are doing. And that is a concept that needs to change with immediate effect. you have to value your network, and you have to be able to celebrate the successes of others.
Right. Thank you very much, Ms. Professor. Thank you very much. I think the great insight and a lot of learning what you said. Could I request Mr. Siddharthan, do you agree that leaders may not be entrepreneurs, but all entrepreneurs can be leaders? What do you have to say on that, Mr. Siddharthan?
Okay, by default, you have those leadership qualities when you are an entrepreneur, right? So, of course, when you do something new out of nothing, it has a lot of courage and a whole lot of qualities that you need to have it to start something new. So I just want to bring in a concept here. Typically, why many people take that plunge, do a startup or to create a new idea and then put it into application. First is, we are very much comfortable in a zone. We are all living in those multiple zones. So the first thing is that we are all comfortable. Now, the most comfortable thing to do is to join a company, complete your course, get a A plus in your college or school, and then take up a job, earn a handsome salary. It's a very comfortable space to be in. Of course, you can be a leader there too, no doubt about it. Right? We are all leaders. We all have those qualities. Education bring that up. Proper training kind of sharpens that. But then beyond comfort is the next stage where there is a lot of fear. Is it okay to go into that zone? What if I fail? Will people laugh at me? How do my parents look at me or my friends? There's always this peer pressure, pressure from everywhere to not to fail. Like what Ms. Prafulla mentioned, I think we need to train first people to fail. As an entrepreneur, you keep failing so many times, but then it's like an obstacle course. I'm sure you guys, you would have had these programs in your ISL. So you have these obstacle course, like people play video games, right? You cross those obstacles to reach a goal, right? Like imagine each obstacle you are trained to handle it. It's like in a video game, each character you have to overcome and then move further. So you have a tool, weapon, and then you have to, overcome that. So go to the next door. You get a key, right? You get a key, absolutely. You get a key. You go to the next level. Something like that. If an entrepreneur, if individual can go out of that fear zone, then there is something called as the learning zone. That is where people start accepting, acquiring newer skills. They're able to deal with challenges better once they're in the learning zone. And finally, we reach the student will reach a stage of zone. So beyond comfort is growth. Beyond comfort is the newness. Beyond comfort is a whole lot of new world. And beyond comfort is entrepreneurship, right? So to be entrepreneur, you need to move out of that, check that comfort, accept failures, keep moving, be resilient. I think that is where one can create and look at the whole world. It is moving ahead because of the entrepreneurs. Today, bigger companies name, right? You name so many companies, Satya. Who are they?
Yes.
They're entrepreneurs, right? They all started. Sometimes they took that risk, came out of that comfort. I think if you train them at a young age, you're doing a fantastic job at ISL. If you can keep those skills, fantastic.
Right. So I think basically to see what both the speakers have said, reskilling is very important. Reskilling is very important. Being mindful, being in the present, and as entrepreneurs, they really take risks. Risks are one of the key factors in being an entrepreneur. And like Ms. Prafulla brought in that, even if you fail 20 times, the 21st you feel that aha moment, and then you move forward. Right. So if you see information reaches in nanoseconds, data analytics, machine learning, data mining, numerous applications were myths some point in time, but today it is reality. And to start this, one has to step out of their comforts, like what Ms. Siddharthan said, and apply their thoughts critically. Celebrate failures, yet stick to the vision. The world of today requires new and economical, viable, and sustainable products. This can be developed only through training our students to hone entrepreneurial skills, which, in other words, is to help them think critically and disruptively. The conceptual knowledge has to be supported by real life skills: persistence, consistency, resilience, fortitude, focus, and others. This real life skill can be developed only by taking action. in a challenging environment, and that is to start an enterprise. And all the startup companies which you see around the world, at some point of them time, they have made it big because they have failed. They have failed in so many times, and as you fail, you learn, and as you learn, you go ahead. So thank you very much for your insights on this question, both Ms. Prafula, being an entrepreneur herself, and Ms. Sudhakaran. Thank you so much. So we go to the last question of the day, and that is for the student, Anjali. Anjali, being a student at Indus, I would like you to speak on the challenges of this online leadership development training. You have recently been part of the online sessions which ISL conducted for grade 12 batch. How effective do you think these leadership sessions had on you? And do you feel the benefit for other students learning? Yes, Anjali. Would you share your thoughts on this?
I would love to, sir. As head girl personally of IISP, we are in the student council, being part of it, we have an acute awareness that's only enhanced by ISL, of how much we have to learn about leadership, how much we have left. There's so many situations where I need to apply certain skills that I have developed through the ISL sessions, through experiences as a person in a position of leadership. Um, only been in Indus for 2 years, uh, and I've seen one of each kind of camp. I happened to be in grade 12 when the world hits a dead end, and so we find our way out as innovative thinkers. Um, in grade 11, I attended a physical version of this ISL camp. So it was outdoors, and it's a physical and mental strain that you're put through. And it's enjoyable, and there's a satisfaction at the end of it. And the entire environment is alive. And for the 5 days that you're in Bangalore, there's a lot of things that you're soaking in and absorbing subconsciously, consciously through the reflections or through the activities, such as the obstacle course that Mr. Siddharthan mentioned. Grade 12 brought a little bit of a change in scenario where this camp was now conducted virtually. And we have the context. I feel like it's so much more important now because there's a context to why we need good leadership. There's so many examples in the world where we know now why we need to do what you're asking us to do. There's a purpose to the teaching that's involved. And I think that's beautiful. Some of the challenges that we thought were presented, maybe through the announcement of a virtual camp, is we had expectations. We said last year this camp was so fabulous and it was outdoors, and we were really curious to know what would be brought this year. And of course, there's an inherent challenge in changing the way a program works when it's purely experiential. And you have to construct a conducive virtual environment for a program that revolves around its core objectives, which is, reimagining and risk-taking, coordination, collaboration, all things that are crucial to a leader's development. And for example, during the activities, to bring up one or two instances, we were asked to sell a broom or a pen, or really invest ourselves as a group in things that might not be life changing, but you still had to adapt to a scenario or a situation in the moment. And to dedicate yourself to that is a really crucial skill for a leader to have, in my opinion. We had energizers that would wake us up in the morning. Monday morning we wake up and we have camp. So the situations that we were thrown into, so there was one game where we had to find one object each. There's 12 people in the class. You have to delegate alphabets and find an object that pertains to each alphabet. And you need to say A for dash, B for dash. It sounds like a very simple task, but we understood, with the emphasis of it being on a virtual platform, that we had to collaborate in order to get the task done so that we could move ahead. And I feel like that's so crucial. And personally, as an impact on me, I got insight. I was thrown into what it is to be in a real leader's shoes, and I know now somewhat, I have an inkling of what's required of a person who wants to be a good leader in its truest sense. And it made me realize, and it obviously consolidated my belief that the leader is nothing without the team, and the team has no direction without the leader. You're an aimless compass if you don't have each other. And so it's a two-way street, and I think ISL just teaches us how to walk it with confidence. And the benefit there to us as students is we're forced to cooperate. Millennials and after, we're lazy. That's how we're acknowledged. But when you force us to cooperate and collaborate, we can be very productive, surprising as that may be. And we're supposed to work smart. And you had to avoid confusion, especially because it's on a virtual platform. You had to consider external factors that could possibly hamper your progress. Is somebody's net not working? Okay, call them up, put them on video call, make do. And these are all things that people in grade 12, I'm sure, that are watching will be relating with, because it's something that everybody experienced, leadership position or not. And so I feel like that's the true aim, is to sharpen every single person's leadership skills. And especially in the context of this is such a relevant topic, leadership development and becoming a leader. It enhances everything from your personality. For somebody my age, I am thinking about a number of things, including my college applications, and I'm reading the news. And this is only enriching all of that. And this is it enhances the amount of reflection that we had. ISL emphasizes that there's a lot of stress on how we should reflect on ourselves as leaders and as people, and how to distinguish the two, and how to analyze yourself objectively, see your strengths and weaknesses, and see yourself as a potential leader. It gives you that confidence. And that reflection, I thought, was outstanding. If I may, sir, I have one recommendation that I'd like to throw in for ISL, because I felt like there were some things that were so extraordinary that should be highlighted more. There could be these energizers that we were given at the beginning of the day. They make you feel so awake and fulfill their purpose, as the name suggests. So if we could have those between shorter sessions, it retains the attention span of somebody my age or even younger, where all they're worried about is when their break is, or when they'll get to go down and play, or hang out with their dog or something. And so it harnesses their interest, and it keeps their attention span for that long. And I feel like it could add to the quality of education, not in the academic sense, of course, but in the true sense that ISL delivers it in. So
Point well taken. You will take the point.
Yes, sir.
And thank you for your insight. Right. Wonderful. Okay, just to ask Ms. Novera, who's been a specialist in her field, what do you think, Ms. Novera, from which grade do you recommend the leadership development training, and why?
Anjali, firstly, I want to say that it was such a pleasure to hear you speak. And Colonel Satya, I feel leadership development has to start very, very young. It should start as early as in the early years. Because leadership development is experiential learning, where we learn through experiences, through reflection and doing. Sorry, I've actually got a really bad throat.
No, that's fine. Take your time.
I think it's just playing up a little bit. At the Indus School of Leadership, students explore self-discovery by engaging in very challenging outdoor activities. And they challenge physically and then guided to reflect upon their feelings, thoughts, behavior, and learning. And I feel the same experience can happen with children regardless of their age, where they are and what they're doing. Because what really tends to happen is that the impact that it actually has on the child, on the head and the heart and the mind. And I don't really feel that this is age bound. I don't really feel that this is something that can happen only when a child is in grade 5 or 6 or 7 and 8. I think leadership development is something that begins very, very young, where a child starts to understand what goal setting is, a child starts to understand who he is, why he's here, what he's doing, and where he wants to go. And this needs to be nurtured from a very, very young age. It's not something that we can actually start doing at a later age. It must start in the formative years.
Right. Thank you so much, Novera. I think what we have seen, both the speakers, One, the affected person, that's the student level, and one is the principal, the head of the school level. And therefore, I think even during the virtual training of this leadership development training, it can be easily possible. There is a possibility very much to learn concepts of the leadership competencies, which are very, very important. And once you understand a concept, and the only challenge is how well do you put it across during a training process, how simplify you need to do the simplification of the concept. Children understand and pick up very well. They're much, much better. Their intake is excellent. They have the energy to learn. And what we have seen during this conduct of these trials and certain sessions through teachers and students, we have found an excellent feedback from both the groups. So thank you very much. And we just requested some audience to give some questions quickly in next 5 minutes. We have one parent, Mr. Varun Sharma. I just I'll throw this question to the panelists. Anyone would like to answer that? How are we trying to make ourselves optimistic and creative? How are we correcting the things that are becoming worse? So would anyone like to speak on that? I'll repeat the question. How are we trying to make ourselves optimistic and creative? How are we correcting the things that are becoming worse? Would anyone like to speak on that, Mr. Siddharthan?
Yeah, it's a very broad question.
Yeah, just to
probably in the current context, probably the question is asked, right?
Yes.
I think it's a collective effort. It's not one person. You can't just watch a program or go attend a training program. It is not going to resolve. It's a collective effort. I think more and more we talk positive. Please don't watch news. I think that's the first thing that probably people should start with. There's a lot of negativity today in the news, especially the visual media. So that's where I could start, and maybe engage in conversation more positively. I think it should start with you first, and then maybe talk to people, engage with people who are more positive. So it's basically how you're using your senses, your visual sense, auditory, kinesthetic. How you engage your senses is what you become of, right? I think if they can engage positively, they should be able to overcome this. And it's a challenge, it's a short-term challenge. We are going to overcome. We've overcome so many bigger problems and challenges. The pandemic is something that we will for sure overcome. Just matter of few months.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Siddharthan.
If I can just add to this, Colonel Rao, I'd just like to say that optimism is a mindset. And I think one has to look at it as any experience, be it a challenging one or something which is very easy. There is always something to learn from every experience. So I think when you start perceiving and viewing life like that, you will automatically look at all these situations as mere experiences where we have to learn something. And there's always something good that comes out of it. So that's just my sense.
Thank you, Ms. Nugara. Question to Ms. Profula. There's a parent who asks, how does a leader define a great client relationship? Would you take on that question, Ms. Profula?
Sure. As a leader, I think it's very important for you to be sensitive to the needs of your client, first and foremost. It's very important for you to be understanding what is the need of the hour. What problem are they trying to resolve? So you basically have a solution that's tailored to that problem. And while you do that, you have to be sensitive to the environment, to everything that surrounds you at that particular juncture. So I can give you an example. Right now in this pandemic, we own a hotel property. All hotels were asked to close down, and we pretty much had no revenue. We had a huge number of staff that were there in these hotels, and we had no idea how were we going to support salaries when there was no revenue being created. Now, we really began to brainstorm on an idea. We started to think, what could we possibly do in this environment to be able to adapt and make this property relevant? And it occurred to us that even before the government proposed this option, it occurred to us that maybe we could offer our hotel property for a COVID center. We could go work with hospitals and offer the property where asymptomatic COVID patients could come in and sign up and stay in that hospital facility, in that hotel facility, where the hospital gave in their medical staff, and people could asymptomatic patients could get cured in a span of 10 to 14 days. So while we were proactive and we understood the need of the hour, we also created a form of revenue. So it's very, very important for you to be in touch with what is happening around you, to understand, to be present, to know what is the need of the hour, and be able to adapt quickly to what you need to get done. So that's one more. I can give you one more example. Like we service in the industrial catering sector. We service huge factories where we have the age-old tradition of chai. We hand over chai to all the employees, and that's an Indian tradition we do really well. Now came a time where we had to be sensitive to the environment. So we had to look at an option where we were working with a company that was very sensitive to being green and eco-friendly. So here we had to see, we couldn't go with the age-old concept of serving tea in paper cups. We had to look for options. We had to look at what was the most eco-friendly way of going in and serving tea to a blue-collared worker. And there came in an idea, the biscuit and chai concept. So we made edible cups, and we decided to make edible cups out of biscuit. And the cups got eaten, and there was no amount of trash created. And that was, again, you have to be able to understand the problem, be able to address it at that moment, be ready to adapt.
Right. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. We just have two more questions before the time is up. This is for Novera. Your idea about mini leadership curriculum for early years children, please elaborate.
I'd like to begin by saying that unfortunately, many people underestimate the potential of children in the early years. I would say children in the early years can learn much more than children who are growing up and definitely adults. For children in the early years, I feel the first thing that one needs to teach them in terms of leadership is to start to develop a purpose and a vision where they learn that they need to give back to the world that they live in. I think that is extremely important because it's very important to build empathy in children. So I think that is one quality which today is on the decline, and we're all seeing this happening around us. And it's very important that as a school, we all learn to nurture this from a very, very young age. So I would say teaching children or creating experiences for them where they are able to develop empathy and they're able to, to create a vision for themselves where they think of life and think of themselves for the greater good of others, and it's not just about themselves. I think that is something which is very critical for children.
Right. Thank you, Novera. This one is for Mr. Siddharthan, parent Mike Hunt. How would you propose the evolution of the education system towards a leadership-focused curriculum globally?
Evolution of leadership curriculum. Complete that?
Yeah. The question is, how would you propose the evolution of the education system towards a leadership-focused curriculum globally?
I think it should start early.
Global level.
Absolutely. So it should start early, for sure. It should become part of the curriculum. Today, there's so much of focus on academics. I think it should start with the parents. How much score you did, what is your score in this subject. That there's so much of drive towards getting the numbers. I think the parents should start probably going beyond the numbers and looking at how my kid personality is getting developed by attending the school or by attending this course. It should start with parents. Second is, of course, there is a role that colleges, institutions, schools can play a role. The governments, of course, now with, I'm sure I was happy with the way that Indian government announced the new policy recently, which is kind of going to shake up the whole existing system, right? And I also realized the curriculum like Anjali is going through IB, right? You have a lot of already these qualities are built in the program itself. I'm seeing a kid who's attending the fifth standard IB curriculum. There's a lot of engagement activities, experiential learning in the academy level itself, right? Which is fantastic. I think that is where we need to bring it one early. We need to look at across, not just limit to say a particular syllabus or a board or something that should be across. And then everybody should play a role, be it government, be it colleges, institution. Let it start with the parents, start accepting that they need to look at their children beyond numbers, and we're not just preparing them to go and find a job, get an X amount of salary. I think that whole concept has to change.
Right.
That change can begin.
Right. So this is the last question for the day, and I'm going to ask Anjali this question. It's a tough question, Anjali, but you can take it on. I know you well. I have the confidence in you.
I'll do my
Some parent
best.
calls. What ways should a leader be involved in the physical and mental and spiritual evolution of our soul, and how to apply it in real life in this pandemic and taking charge of our lives? Should I repeat the question?
Yes, please, sir.
What ways should a leader be involved in the physical and mental and spiritual evolution of our soul, and how to apply it in real life in this pandemic and taking charge of our life?
Sir, I'd like to commend the person who framed that question. That's an awesome question. I'd love to answer it. I'm honored. Um, I feel like a large portion of what a leader is their vision, but not just the vision. It's the ability to make others around them see the path to the vision, to stand at the base and not just see the peak, but also see that they have the way up and that they're probably worth taking a chance upon. In terms of being involved in the development of a person, spiritual, emotional, mental, it's as Miss Noera correctly said, it becomes the duty of a leader to be able to tap into their own empathy, to connect with other people. The world is not a machine, it's not steel, it's a very human concept, empathy. And so when people are on your wavelength, when they see what you see, and you give them the feeling and you make them feel enabled, that's called inspiration. And in terms of being mentally developed, in terms of being spiritually developed, you will, as a follower, as a leader, you will begin to develop a sense of faith and belief in success, in eventually getting there. And that's one of the most prominent roles of a leader to me. Definitely,
Right.
I'd say so. That
Thank
was a
you.
fantastic question.
Very well spoke. I think at the end of the day, it is the purpose of life where you stand. And if you can find the purpose of life, I think everything boils down to the journey of life. Okay. Thank you very much. I don't think we have much time. Just to conclude, leadership development training provides students important leadership skills and attributes. They need to be an effective leader, such as communication skills, motivation, and inspiration, as well as better decision making skills and accountability. Online videos, virtual interactions, reflections, and assessments are all excellent tools for teaching leadership competencies to help students perform better. Thank you very much, panelists, speakers, to each one of you for being part of the panel discussion and giving your insights into the online leadership development training. I'm sure there has been clarity among our viewers in understanding the importance of online leadership training. Indus School of Leadership has designed modules to conduct programs in the coming session for all schools. So thank you very much for sharing this platform and creating this entire webinar as a learning process for parents, teachers, and students. Thank you very, very much. Thank you. We close here. Thank you, viewers, for patiently hearing us. I think there was some technical hitch first 2-3 minutes. However, I think everything goes off very well at the end of the day. Thank you very much. Mr. Siddharthan, thank you very much for your contribution. Mr. Prafula Shetty, thank you for your insights on being an entrepreneur. And Ms. Nuvera, thank you very much for being the principal and giving your insight. And of course, last but not the least, Anjali, you spoke very well and your insights have been excellent. Thank you very much, and thank you and good night. Have a great day.
Good night.
Thank you very
Night.
much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much.